Yes, Horror Nights History, I.C.U. Part 4. So here we are. I was talking about Nightmare Alley. Now, this one puzzles me. To the best of my recollection, apparently I must have gone into the zone. I went to every frickin' zone and every frickin' house at this event. I know that, more than once. But this one really puzzles me. Apparently it was indoors. In a building which is now sometimes called the Hercules building. If you're in Shrek Alley, as they call it nowadays, and on one side, on the left, if you're going down the Plaza of the Stars, you turn right and go on to Shrek Alley. So you're walking towards Mel's Diner, right? So you're going down Shrek Alley towards Mel's Diner, where they've had scare zones the past couple of years, like the Coven this year, and last year was War of the Dead, and the year before that was the American Gothic. Really nifty little area for scare zone. But there wasn't any scare zone in 2001. But if you go down that area, on the left-hand side, there's a big building with almost nothing going on in it. I've heard all sorts of stories over the years that the building is unsafe for use. And they're going to fix the roof, maybe, then they can use it. There used to be shows in that area. There was a Murder, She Wrote show there for a while. There was another show featuring the characters of Hercules and Xena from the Sam Raimi syndicated television series Hercules and the legendary journeys and Xena Warrior Princess. And but funny story, I knew this guy was a bodybuilder, big, professional wrestler, bodybuilder type, big, huge. He looked like He-Man. In fact, way back in the 80s, he had taken advantage of that and played He-Man for certain theme park adventure type things. When he heard that a Hercules show was coming up at Universal, he said, "Oh yeah, I can get that. I look like Hercules." And I said, "No, you don't." "What do you mean? Look at me, these guns and and showing off his massive, big bodybuilder's physique." I said, "You haven't seen the show, have you? Kenneth Sarbo is not a bodybuilder. He looks like a regular dude." And he says, "How can you have Hercules has to be like George Reeves or Lou Ferrigno or somebody." Not this time. So he was really pissed off, but going off into roid rage over it. But hey, I didn't make the TV show and decide what Hercules was going to look like this time around on the show. I mean, dude's a god. He doesn't have to be big to have supernatural strength. It's supernatural strength. See, he's like the son of Zeus, the demigod thing. So he could look like anybody and have powers and shit. Straying from the point, they had a Hercules show there at and they also had other things. At times they had sets. I seem to vaguely remember that around 1999 or 2000, they actually had actual sets from The Mummy, or one of those Mummy movies. Not 2001, but 1999. I think they actually had some set pieces from The Mummy, which they have the fake sets in the haunted house, and then they have the actual set pieces that look better. That kind of, I don't know. I didn't know that was a great idea to have a mummy haunted house when you actually showed the real thing, the much better looking set. Or you could use those in the house, but no, they couldn't have done that, whatever the thing was. But in 2001, apparently put some sort of a scare zone in that building. Or between the building and another building. I think it was in the building called Nightmare Alley, and I think the Chainsaw Drill Team was there. Again, I'm not quite certain, because I have very limited memory of an indoor scare zone that year. I remember Nightmare Creatures a year before, perhaps because it was so frickin' awesome, and going underneath King Kong and all of that. That's something you can't, that's something you remember better. But the Nightmare Alley, I just don't remember it that clearly, if I at all. I just indoor. So that particular indoor scare zone didn't work so well, apparently. At least it didn't stick in the mind. But again, they had to put a scare zone where it wouldn't affect the parade. The year before, they had some trouble with the one in Hollywood and the one in New York, but they, try to get it out of the way. Well, this was a place where it wouldn't affect the parade, clearly. Well, the parade that year, and I just realized I forgot something that I was going to do. Damn me. Oh well. Let me get back to the parade later, for the next video, for personal reasons, okay? So, I'm going to wait and do the parade a little bit later on the next video, because God knows I'm going to have to do part 6. Alright. The shows, aside from the parade, were dangerous delusions. Delusion is spelled D''illusion. So it's not like delusion, like you're deluded. It was like delusions, because it was a magic show. The latest in the long tradition of magic shows that have appeared at Halloween Horror Nights, from the Pendragons in 1991 to Brian Brushwood in 2010. So we have, in 2001, the tradition, of course, was still going on, around halfway between those 2 points, with Dangerous Delusions. And it was held in the Animal Actor Theatre. And it was not that memorable. They had an interesting thing, though, that they were going to call it Bloodbath, I believe. And it was going to be, again, they were getting ready to replace King Kong with the Mummy, and so King Kong wasn't operating, and instead they had the New York streets underneath King Kong, which they would use, but not for a scare zone-ish, haunted house-ish sort of attraction that they had the year before. This time they were going to put, because they weren't doing live bands anymore by this point, so instead we want to have a disc jockey, because they still thought they needed to have music. And they weren't doing the stage, the bands, like they had sort of stopped doing that, and they had a disc jockey or something, and have a little sort of place where the kids would dance if they wanted to. And so they had this idea, because it was still the idea of this is a Halloween party and you need to have music. And that idea kind of was still around for a couple of years, going on into a couple more years. So this idea was, we'll have this sort of nightclub, we'll call it a fright club, and we'll put it, Bloodbath, into the area underneath the ride in the New York streets area, and there'd be like blood and on everything. Well, blood through the streets of New York in 2001, just a couple weeks after 9/11. Uh-oh! So let's change this immediately. So they got rid of any of the red food coloring and blood completely, and instead they filled it with foam. They had a foam party. It may have been foam to begin with, just colored red, I don't know. But now it was all foam, and it was called in order to make it scary, because foam parties are not unknown. Nightclubs sometimes will do this as part of they were kind of the rage at that time. So it worked out all right, but we have to make it a little scary and sinister, so we called it the Ooze Zone. Like, filled with this oozing secretion of white stuff. Don't go there. And in the foam, they had the music playing, so it was sort of like going to Firestone on a Thursday night, I guess, but at Universal instead, in the streets of New York underneath. You probably don't even know what I meant by that reference, because you may not. I think that club is closed. God, it's been a long time since I've been there. Early 90s or something, mid-90s. Dating myself there, but Anyway, So, and there was another show which was interesting. I didn't actually see it because, well, I'll tell you why. Essentially, at this exact moment, October of a DVD was released and a VHS, but DVD, because DVD had come in by this point. It was called Boogeyman, the Killer Compilation. And essentially, it was an hour, 57-minute long clip show of horror movies. Now, I would collect these on DVD already, if they were on DVD or on VHS or whatever. I'd want to see the actual movies, because, you know, why do I want a clip show when I can go see the real thing? I can either buy or rent the real thing, not these clips. Oh yeah, these are the highlights of the movies, but yeah. So there was a presentation at Universal in the Hollywood, where they have the Monster Makeup Show Theater, and they showed, I don't think they showed the entire 57-minute presentation, but they probably showed pieces of it or bits of it. They said continuous shows. I mean, I suppose they could just simply play it over and over again all night. Or highlights from the Boogeyman DVD. But that's what was going on. It was basically, you saw the clips from horror movies. And it was like, well, you know, I've seen the better horror movies here already. And, you know, why would I want to go to a clip show when there are haunted houses to do and other shows that I am more interested in seeing that are bigger and more important to me? So why would I want to go see a clip show of horror movies? So that's why I didn't go to Boogeyman. I could have if I wanted to. And I thought, and I could always, if I really, really, you know, I can always buy the damn DVD, you know, later, because it's out there. You can still buy it today. It's still available. There's been a sequel, The Boogeyman 2, but I don't think that was used at Universal at any time. But this one was promoted at Universal, and I don't know why exactly, because it was something called Flixwix or Flixtrix or something was the company that made the DVD. I don't know if that's a subsidiary of some part of the whole Universal Vivendi. It may have been, you know, because part of the whole Universal Vivendi corporate entity at that time. I don't know. But they said 17 of the most frightening boogeymen from the horror movies in one DVD, and it was presented at Universal and for Halloween Horror Nights, and the 17 included some of the best horror icons that have appeared at other times throughout Universal's Halloween Horror Nights and in other movies that you remember and you love, and a few that you might be vaguely aware of and say, yeah, and a couple you go, who? Who the fuck you talking about? And then maybe if you're like the uber psychotic horror geek who watches everything, no matter how awful or pathetic it might be, then you might know all about every single one of them. And you're obsessive and psychotic and you have bad hygiene. Yeah, sure, I have got kind of lanky hair today, but I'm not quite that bad. And you have no social skills whatsoever. You don't make eye contact when you talk to people. Sheldon Cooper, bazinga, type of obsessiveness. Then perhaps you would know all about this. There's a couple on here, on this list of 17, that I scratch my head and say, who the fuck is that? Now, most of them I know pretty damn well because I am a horror nut, but apparently not as big as some people. Anyway, Pinhead from Hellraiser, Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street, of course, Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, given, the Ghostface Killer from Scream, yes, Chucky from Child's Play, yes, Candyman from Candyman, of course, the Leprechaun from Leprechaun. Yeah, I know about those movies. Yeah, big classic films like Leprechaun in the Hood or Leprechaun in Space. Oh dear. That's 7. And so I'll have to continue this on the next part 5. Until then, toodles.